on behalf of Monarch Global Strategies, LexLatin, and all my partners at SMPS Legal, I want to welcome to this great breakfast discussion on the state of the U.S. elections and their impact on our region and the energy, infrastructure, and nearshoring sectors. Without further ado, I want to introduce to you our moderator for this morning, Fernando Peláez, CEO of LexLatin, who shall make the presentations of our panelists and the topics we will discuss this morning.
We are very lucky to have such a qualified panel with us, and I would like to briefly introduce each one of them. First of all, we have Michael Camuñez. Michael is the president and CEO of Monarch Global Strategies. Monarch is a binational business advisory firm providing C-suite strategic advice, project development expertise, government relations, and supply chain sourcing for companies doing business globally, with a particular emphasis on Mexico and Latin America. Also, we have Luis Ricardo Rodriguez, who is the managing partner of Monarch Global Strategies. He's based in Mexico, in Monterrey, and guides multinational companies through complex business challenges in Mexico and Latin America. And Pedro, also a member of Monarch. He's senior director, and he has extensive expertise in the public and private sectors across industries such as energy, infrastructure, tourism. The representatives from SMPS Legal, we have three of the senior partners of the firm joining us in this discussion. I will start with Maria Teresa Payés, well known in the legal sector in Mexico and international. She has more than 30 years of experience advising clients on high-level transactions, both nationally and internationally. On my left, I have Eduardo Pizarro, that he provides legal advice and business planning for local and multinational companies doing business in Mexico. His corporate practice has particular emphasis on the creation and structuring of corporations, spin-off, mergers and acquisitions, as well as all types of transactions and investments with Mexican and foreign capital. Jorge San Martin, he is a partner in the firm, responsible for one of the most important areas of practice, I would say, that is tax. He's both a certified public accountant and a lawyer. He practices, as I said, focus on tax and business planning, mergers and acquisitions, as well as corporate reorganizations. What is the current state of the U.S. presidential race, Michael? How do recent polling trends and key battleground states shape the potential outcome of the elections?
I actually believe with all my heart in the promise of North America and in the future of Mexico and its relationship with the United States. I think it is the most important strategic relationship the United States has for a variety of reasons. I think it's objectively fair to say that the momentum has been with Harris. There are probably 6 or 7 key states that will determine the outcome of this election. Before Biden dropped out, there was one path to victory for the Democrats. President Biden had to win the so-called blue wall states, the states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And he was trailing in those places. And the thought was, if he didn't hold the blue wall, Trump would be guaranteed almost a certainty. And you've seen Harris be able to put some southern states like North Carolina and Georgia into play. All of a sudden, states where Trump wasn't investing at all are now very, very close. But nobody should underestimate Donald Trump. There is a very real possibility that he can win this race, and he is still doing well among his base of non-college voters. Latinos, non-college educated Latino voters are very supportive of Trump. He's shoring up his base. Historically, Democrats have done very well with the Democratic Party. That support is declining over time. So the big takeaway is that it's too close to call, but there are multiple scenarios to watch for with the battleground states, and there's I would say momentum is with Harris, but momentum only gets you so far. So we'll see what happens.
what are the most significant factors that could influence change voters' sentiment and campaign dynamics as we approach the final stretch of the presidential race?
You could have a major foreign policy event that could create uncertainty, and I think that's a scenario. You could have a major misstatement by one of the parties. There's a concept that I want you to take away with, is called the red mirage and the blue wave. Because of the way ballots are counted in the United States, it tends to favor the reporting of Republican votes earlier in the night. So early in the evening, because the polls close on the East Coast and a lot of the southern states are deeply red states, you have an early tallying and reporting that comes back that makes it look, just in aggregate numbers, like the Republicans are doing well. So you could see early reporting and the so-called red mirage, this idea that it looks like Trump is doing well. And then as ballots start to close later in the country, as with the time zone differences, and as absentee ballots start to get counted, you see this blue wave come in. And that's my biggest fear, is that blue wave comes, ballots are counted, and the Democrats win, but win by a small margin later in time than anyone would like, and that will foster and feed the narrative that the election was stolen and that there was fraud in the election. And at that point, we could be looking at a very unstable period in the United States. I hope I'm wrong, but that is a very likely outcome for this election.
What is at stake for Mexico in the U.S. elections? Are there manifold differences between the two candidates and their positions on Mexico?
I mean, both candidates are trying to close the wall or build the wall or just stop immigration. That's an issue that I think whoever wins will be the same issue. And the other one is economics. You know, we're going to have an effect right now with the change of the interest rate that should be going down within the next, this week, I guess, when they decide. And that's going to have an effect in investments, no, because they have to value the risk and the value of the companies. But and I hope that the institutions in the United States are strong enough for even in the scenarios that Michael was just describing, are not hindered or not affected. And I think that's something that the rest of the world is looking for, no?
Michael, what are the most pressing issues that the next U.S. president will need to address with respect to Mexico?
I think we're entering a period of potentially tremendous stress in the bilateral relationship between the United States and Mexico, to be very candid. The outcome of this election will affect a number of things that are at stake for Mexico. Number one, U.S. industrial policy, which the Biden administration has really invested heavily in with the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the bilateral infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, is set to ignite about $4.5 trillion of cumulative investment over the next decade. But if Trump is elected, there's a good chance that he would seek to defund or eliminate many of the programs, especially those related to the clean energy transition, and that could have significant impacts on the bilateral relationship, because a lot of the focus of U.S. industrial policy is reorienting supply chains and bringing manufacturing not just back to the United States, but back to North America generally. And I think Mexico has a lot at stake. I think there are two very significant issues on the agenda for the bilateral relationship. One is China. I think the China issue is going to be very central for the next administration vis-a-vis Mexico. The second issue, however, is the sunset review, which I know we're going to talk about separately. But the USMCA remember, was passed with a 16-year term, with a commitment by all parties to review it 6 years in, which is in 2026. By July 1 of 2026, the three amigos have to decide whether to renew the agreement. Harris and Trump both will have, I think, will get to similar outcomes for different reasons on USMCA review. It's likely that the U.S. will not agree to renew the USMCA and will go into a year-by-year renewal process until certain concessions are made.
Do you share the views that the situation that we have in Mexico, which are basically the concerns about the rule of law, the weakening of Mexican democracy and democratic institutions, will impact, and then there will be no renewal and it will move forward as just explained by Michael?
There's going to be a lot of pressure to try to renegotiate the terms, and the recently approved reform is not helping. That creates a lot of uncertainty. Of course, in an environment where investor intends to come into Mexico, there are certain standards that need to be met, including to have access to a fair judicial system that is going to interpret and apply the law in the proper manner, rule of law. And if we do not do that, we are breaching the agreement, because those are assumptions under the agreement.
What is your best guess regarding the implementation of the judicial reform that was enacted last Sunday?
What's happening is something that no other country other than Bolivia has done, which is electing all federal judges by electoral vote, opening vote. And that's going to be, it's already in the Constitution. And what's happening right now is that we need the secondary laws that will implement how that vote will be done. Basically, we think it's very, very complicated. And when they start looking into the law that regulates how this is going to be taken care of, they are going to come into a lot of conflict. They are going to come into a lot of trying to understand how to do this. So it's going to be a process of trying to understand how this is going to change the way the judicial system works, how the laws are going to be implemented. And I think it's going to be a challenge for Mexico, a big challenge. I think Mexico is much more than just a judicial reform. Mexico has a lot of international trade. Mexico depends on a lot of what it does abroad and how merchandise comes and goes out of the country. And I think that even though the judicial system might be in a crisis, everything else in Mexico is not. And that's going to help balance out what we will see in the next couple of years.
The impact of the judicial reform on many of these companies will probably be, a non-issue. As it's been mentioned here, it's certainly something to look out for. Other, areas of investment, it's something that we should be following very closely, but particularly for manufacturing, I don't think it's really going to be that big of an impact.
The place where I do think it will be an issue, and where I think, this is my plug for my legal colleagues, where it will be very important to have good legal counsel, is in regulated industries where you're doing business with the state. And there's telecommunications or the oil and gas or electricity, or in regulated industries where the counterparty is the state. I think it's going to be very important to really think about choice of law principles, insisting on international arbitration. For those of you counseling foreign investors, that having really excellent, competent local counsel in Mexico will be very essential, especially depending on the sector that you're looking at. Such as SMPS, for example.
What we think it's pretty important for the companies is just to do what they can do to protect themselves, and by this I mean to be very to have all your records in place, to see how things are being worked in terms of the operation vis-a-vis the Mexican tax authority. So just to do the homework really hard, and to have all documentation and everything that needs to be given to the tax authorities if at some point in time an audit is being made by the Mexican tax authorities, and try to minimize any effect that this could generate to the company. So we do not know what is going to happen with a judicial reform, but we do know that we have that the advice is for the companies and the clients to do their own homework in terms of being compliant with whatever they need to be compliant with.
Energy policy has been a source of stress in the U.S.-Mexico relationship, and the AMLO administration significantly undercut many of the 2013 reforms that were designed to open investment in the energy sector. Do you expect the new president will take a different approach to energy policy? How and why, Eduardo?
We have a big problem in Mexico because we're short. We have a deficit right now in energy generation, which experts say is that, together with what we need from the nearshoring that is coming, is around 30 gigawatts. That, according to Morgan Stanley, is the cost would be around $45 billion. And our government does not have the money nor the capacity to resolve that problem. So she will need private investment, foreign investment, that's for sure. and there will be a very important role for that. No, I'm going to ask Pedro to jump in. He's probably one of the few teams that have achieved permits in these energy permits in these times. And Pedro I know he has had a lot of approaches with the new authorities that will come in the sector, and that probably has more inside information in connection with investments, private investments, alliance with the government, and these changes in the profile of the individuals that will run the authorities.
Hopefully, we will see by the end of her administration that all the heavy fuel and diesel plants that are generating today will be decommissioned, and that energy needs to be filled with renewable energies. So there's a reason to be very optimistic, although cautious. The appointments that she made will return us to common sense decision making, as opposed to having ideological guys leading the policy. And there's a reason to be very optimistic about Mexico in the energy sector.
But there's going to be a huge opportunity to build some clean power plants in Mexico. But to Jorge and Eduardo's point, the Mexican government is broke. Sheinbaum is inheriting a very fiscally challenged government. So there's going to be need and opportunity for some public-private partnerships with CFE. But also, I think in the transmission and distribution sector, if you look at the transmission and distribution lines in Mexico, they're very underdeveloped and they're very capital intensive. Again, Mexico doesn't have the resources, the capital to build those power lines to connect these new plants to the so-called last mile. And that, I think, is another opportunity for private sector investment. To do these kinds of investments requires a certain kind of know-how. You have to understand the politics in Mexico. You have to understand how to navigate CFE and the CRE and SENACE, all of the regulatory bodies. And in this administration, everything's going to go through the Ministry of Energy. The Ministry of Energy is going to be a very important body and to navigate. But you're also going to have good legal expertise to know how to structure those joint ventures in ways that get both the political support and the legal framework right in Mexico. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and my money is that we'll see a lot of investment in that sector.
The decisions will be made by SENER, but also by the Finance Ministry. It will be a combination between academics and, for example, the new Minister of Energy has also a financial background. So those common sense decisions will really start to come back to Mexico.
Is nearshoring a passing trend, or is likely to remain a key business strategy under the new administration?
I don't think it's passing. I think it's going to remain. As we discussed, the integration between Mexico and the United States is there.
I don't necessarily see it as a temporary window. I think the conditions are here in Mexico in order to have nearshoring as part of our DNA. To the extent that there's favorable infrastructure conditions and that there's labor conditions and obviously training, education, I think we could certainly see the rise of other areas in Mexico that could be very attractive.
Our biggest competitors for nearshoring is not Central America nor Vietnam. Probably is Texas and Arizona. No, so we need to hurry up and do a good job. And this lady Sheinbaum has a big challenge to try to take the wave and take advantage of this big opportunity that we have.
What are the most significant infrastructure projects proposed by the upcoming administration, if any?
We should see at least a couple of major port expansions. If we want to really ride this nearshoring ride, major investments in water, and she contemplates them. Anything that will support attracting more nearshoring arrivals will be supported by her administration.
Mexico presents a mix of both opportunities and challenges for investors. What will be your final message for those considering investing in the country?
I think that for anyone looking to especially for global companies thinking about a global strategy, having a footprint to serve the North American market, broadly defined, Mexico continues to be a very attractive place. Mexico's doing advanced manufacturing. It's going to continue to grow in that sector. The quality of the work here is incredible. It still has, for all of the advantages that Arizona and Texas has, Mexico still has a very competitive workforce at a much lower cost than the United States. Wages need to go up. That's a reality. But I think fundamentally, Mexico remains a vibrant economy. It has its challenges that it's up to Mexico to fix. But I'm still an optimist, and I still believe in the opportunities that are here. But that said, I remain very bullish about the future of Mexico and the future of North America, and it's the central thesis of our firm, Monarch Global Strategies. We named our firm Monarch because the monarch butterfly migrates from Mexico to the United States, to Canada, and back. And that circle of life, that circle of integration reflects our core thesis as a company that that's the future for the United States, Mexico, and Canada together, and that's the future of the world.
Yes, I mean, we're here to stay. It's many good opportunities. We see that every day in our platform of lawyers. We receive clients every day with different needs and projects, interesting projects, and that we are sure that is not going to change.
As I said, time of crisis is time of opportunities. So I would like to thank all of you for attending this seminar. And also I would like to thank you, all the panelists that make the discussion so interesting.
Thank you very much, and a big applause to our panelists.